Tina Peters, right now, let's have a big hand for her. That's another piece that proves Mike was right. Sidney Powell, that news came out as well. Again, Mike was right. As more and more of the election evidence comes to light, we're going to find that Mike was right. It is incredible. The last 24 hours has been an incredible journey. A great interview in Minnesota, sitting down there in Rochester, out of the blue, a reporter calls up, emails, and wants to interview Mike because he was excluded from the MNGOP's gubernatorial debate coming up on Thursday. She had in her heart to call Mike and do the interview. That interview came out last night, and I got to see it this morning. We shared it out with all of our volunteers, so look for that email, share it. Please get the word out there. She did a great job. So the media is starting to break to realize there's a real story here. There's a story of redemption. This is why when we looked at his book from 2019, how did we know that this book is dedicated to those looking for hope? Look at where Minnesota's at now. Look at the hope that he can bring. Look at the courage he already has. Will you help us write the next book? From election investigator to governor. Let's do it. Mike Lindell.
Thank you, everybody. I'm going to do this a little bit different. I'm actually going to time myself here. We're going to do take a lot of this, put it out to millions on social media. So I was back there reading my book or looking at my book. I had not looked at this book since I wrote it. It was the first time just backstage, and of course I knew everything that's in it. I lived it. But in the beginning, the book's called "What Are the Odds from Crack Addict to CEO?" And I'm going to read you something I wrote in the front of the book. It says, "In this lifetime, all of us experience moments, sometimes so unique or unusual, that we pause and we say, wow, what are the odds happen? Or if something like that happens again, maybe we say, oh, it's just a coincidence. How many once-in-a-lifetime events do we attribute to simple chance before we believe that perhaps it's something more? Or at what point do you ask yourself, is it all just luck? Or have I just experienced a miracle?" And I wrote right below that in the book, it says, "I dedicate this book to anyone looking for hope." And I go to the back of the book when I was back there, as backstage. And in the book, by the way, my life here, I grew up in Minnesota, born and raised. And I've had 14 near-death experiences, from falling asleep on a motorcycle, going skydiving, the parachute didn't open. I've been trapped underwater, I've had fires, I've had guns to my head, swords to my throat, and been a parallel track, a very functioning addict for most of my life before I was quit everything, and I'll tell you about that when we get going. But and at the end of the book here, it says, this book ended when I was on stage, when I seen myself on stage at some college, and I found out it was Liberty College with these thousands and thousands. I think it was 20,000 people there, and I'd seen it in a dream years prior. And it's the day they gave me an honorary doctorate, but I had a fear of public speaking. I couldn't speak in public. If you read my book, I couldn't speak with 3 people in the same room. When I wrote my book, it was fear of rejection. You don't get rejected if you don't talk. And anyway, when the book ends here, the last line says, "What are the odds that an ex-crack addict, drinker, and gambling addict would be invited to address this huge group of young people? 1 in a million, 1 in a billion, impossible. Let's call it what it is, a miracle. Then the book says to be continued. Well, I'll tell you, I have, during that time, when I first walked into the White House back in 2017, and it was surreal when I walked in there, and I didn't think I could get within 20 feet of the White House with my record. And the president had invited me there, and when I was growing up, I'm a huge fan of Elvis Presley. By the way, you probably heard music out there. I was playing that as we were all waiting. But I'm a huge Elvis Presley fan. My first concert was Elvis Presley, and I seen a picture of Richard Nixon and Elvis Presley back in the 70s, and I'm going, wow, you got to be Elvis Presley in order to ever meet a president. It wasn't the other way around. I really thought it that way. I thought, I'm never going to meet a president. Then after my stuff in the 80s, DWIs, everything, all the trouble I had got into, I thought, well, boy, I'm never going to be able to even run for office, much less meet a president. And as I walked in the White House in 2017, the second picture in was Elvis Presley and Richard Nixon. And I'm going, wow, it was just surreal, right? So I get in the White House and I get to, they had this big table set up and we were there for a manufacturing summit. And there was like 14 of us. We all sat down and I'm sitting here. I said, who's sitting here? There was no name tag. He said, the president is. He wanted to sit by him. Well, I didn't know that. Right? And so we sit down and it goes live to the nation. And all my friends at home, my ex-crack friends, and I didn't have quit crack, obviously. They're going, what is this crack addict doing on TV with the president? This is impossible. Jesus is real because it is impossible. So, I've lived the American dream on steroids to go from where living the American dream as an entrepreneur, and then also taking myself down, the devil taking me down as an addict, and then to be able to, get a company, start from nothing, go all around Minnesota selling pillows. I invented a pillow, I invented out of the back of a pickup truck and a trailer in every nook and cranny of Minnesota when I was turned down everywhere, and then to build it to thousands and thousands of employees, one of the biggest direct sale companies in history, and sold 85 million My Pillows. But and then another thing I wrote on the back of the book, I want to read this too. It's my favorite proverb. I go by it every day. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding, and always acknowledge Him, and He shall direct your paths. Well, God directs my path every day, and that's. I'm going to take you back. I'm going to do this in like 3 segments. I want to bring you back and tell you just a little bit about bringing you up to kind of what I just told you to the end of the book. When this book ends, people that have read it, how many people have read my book? Okay. Well, when this book ends, and remember when it says to be continued, from what's happened since that point till now, you could take everything in this book and multiply by 1,000, and it's impossible. It's like living inside the biggest spy movie the world has ever known. And it's a battle of evil and good. It's biblical proportions. This is what we're in. We're in a battle that it's the greatest time in history to be alive. I mean, this is it, And so I'm going to bring you back. Then I'm going to bring you up to right up to the 2020 election. I'm going to bring you through, like you just talked about, Gina Peters getting released today. Get released June 1st, but they made the announcement. I'm going to tell you how I got here, and then I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do from here going on. So we'll do 3 segments, but so let's start first. Like I said, I was born and raised in Minnesota. I was born in Mankato. My parents divorced when I was 7 years old. And divorces were not common in the 1960s. This was in 1968. So my mom moved us to a trailer court in Chaska, Minnesota. I've lived the rest of the time. That's where I'm at now. And we moved there, and I got into a new school then, and I felt like different. I was the only kid from a divorced family, the only one. in any place I looked. It was like, so maybe that's where I got my fear of rejection. I would either show off or I wouldn't talk to people. I was very kind of introverted, more extremes. And anyway, then we'll go through. I remember my 5-year class reunion. I hadn't done anything. I had actually dropped out of college when the Iranians took the hostages in 1979. That's when I dropped out of the University of Minnesota after only 1 quarter. I told my roommate, I said, I'm out of here. I think the world's coming to an end. I got to go have some fun. So this means a lot, this Iran thing to me, right? And so I left college, and I just, at that time, I worked at a drive-in movie theater and a grocery store. And I remember at my 5-year reunion, all of them had either finished college or they had started families. Some of them had started businesses. Some of them had moved up in their whatever they were doing right out of college. And I hadn't done anything except for a lot of got in trouble with football bets with the mafia showing up at my door. Somebody read my book. And anyway, I get to the 5-year reunion, and I just took over that reunion because all I had was to tell them about, like I said, I fell asleep on a motorcycle, I went skydiving the same day, parachute didn't open, the mafia came to my door, I owed tens of thousands of dollars to them, and I couldn't pay, and things like that, and all going, whoa. And I got home that night, and I remember laying in bed, and just a sadness came over me that I will never forget that feeling. I wanted what they had. It was a deep emptiness that I had, and I just cried. I lay in bed and cried. And I prayed for a family. I prayed for normalcy, or just to be like whatever that is. And by then I had gotten into addiction, alcohol. I had gotten cocaine maybe a year later. But then I had this parallel track that God granted me. Here's a family. I married. 20-year marriage, had 4 kids, and it was very much what would you call it? I was still addicted. It was, but I had these things, and I was always an inventor. I was an entrepreneur, and I was problem solution. So I had, like my sister popped a waterbed, the 3rd story of an apartment building, and I became a carpet cleaner. So it was problem solution, and. Then I was at Wilmer one year for too many DWIs, and this guy and I were talking in the middle of the night, and I said, what do you do? He said, I run a lunch wagon. These lunch wagons out in California, you open up the side, and people come up and buy food off them. And I said, well, that sounds really interesting. And I asked him, how much would it be to start off? I asked him all these questions, and I called my buddy, and I said, I'm going to have the earliest day here. Come up with $8,000. We're going to start a lunch wagon business. And I got done the earliest ever at Wilmer Treatment Center. And then we started the lunch wagon business in the Twin Cities. We were off by Chaska and Chanhassen and Shakopee. And within 2 years, we had this massive business going with multiple trucks, 5 trucks. But I didn't give up. I would go to get these stops and try and talk them into something I think God has gift to me of is basically the gift of sales. If I believe in something, I don't stop. I was so persistent. I remember going to United Mailing over and over. Every day I'd get a no, and I'd try and get to the next person above them. Finally, I'm all the way up to the president of the company. He was this 20-some-year-old kid, and I said, yeah, we're going to have this lunch wagon. We're going to pull up, and I said, what if we gave sandwiches to everyone in your company all week long for free? And in my mind, I'm going, maybe they would buy other stuff so you would, balance your budget, so to speak. And he agreed. He goes, you do that? I said, absolutely, because I believed in our service so much, even though we were changing a paradigm and with that company. And I told my partner, I go, hey, we got it, but there's one catch. We got to give away sandwiches for a week. He goes, what? He didn't see the big picture, right? But it worked. That's one thing I could see, and I did work. The stuff that I had on the truck that I predicted, if they would buy this much, I used the data from my other trucks. If they would buy this much, you wouldn't lose any money that week. Okay, So it was just a business thing. But anyway, like I said, that same path, and then being a functional addict. You know, functional addict, there's many people in addiction aren't just everybody in the streets that don't have, you know, I've been in the streets too, where you don't have anything. I always in my book, I think I use it, everyone from no forks to 4 forks and everywhere in between is affected by addiction. Well, anyway, let's fast forward. So we fast forward to I had bought a bar and multiple bars, but one in Victoria, Minnesota by a contract for deed. It was always very creative, starting businesses with no money. And it was usually because the person I would sell, the person I'm buying it from, or doing it to sell them on here's what I'm going to do, and here's what I'm going to come up with, and here's what it's going to manifest to. But a bar wasn't a good place for an addict. And I thought, I want to tell you this because it kind of tells you a little who I am. In our state, the Indian casinos, we were the first one. Morton, Minnesota, Jackpot Junction was the first Indian casino in the United States. Expanded to Mystic Lake and all over our state. And me being in the, I had bought a nightclub in 1990, and then I had, that was a big bar restaurant, basically. And then the bar restaurants, I had 3 of them. But we had our gambling laws, our charitable gambling laws were not good we were going to go under. There would be so much, it was a disaster with now the casinos getting food, liquor, hotels, gas, cigarettes, you name it. And our industry, to go up against them, we had to have that charitable gambling. But the laws were wrong here. It was, you were short, if your bar expanded, if you did better, you got nothing for it. So I went out to Washington State, which I thought had the best charitable gambling laws in the nation at that time, and they did. And I brought that back here to Minnesota, and I actually sued City Hall. I went after them for law changes. And I was on the Minnesota Licensed Beverage Association board at that time. But I fought for these changes, and I lost on a technicality. Now, 2 things happened. One is, now I didn't get charitable gambling at all. So I basically lost everything I had built at my main bar I had for 13 years overnight. And at that time, it was so tragic. It was like you can't, the feeling it was like it's the end of the world. And so I had to be forced to sell it, which I look back now, that's a miracle in itself. One of the biggest miracles. I'd either be dead or it would be, I'm going to be standing here. But anyway, everything I fought for came true 3 years later in Minnesota, about 3.5 years later. And remember, I fought right to the end, and I knew if I lost, they were coming after me. You don't go after the government, but I did. Well, maybe that was the seeds that are done now. but anyway, 3.5 years later, it all came true, and I got calls from around the state, about 5 or 6 different bar and restaurant owners, and they said, Mike, we know you lost everything you worked your life for, but we want to thank you. You saved us. And I said, and that meant so much to me, but I would do it again. And I told him that I would do it again. It was right. We were going down anyway, but it was, I seen something, the big picture that they couldn't see, and no one would do anything about it. Y'all follow me? I mean, that was it. So then we'll go into the My Pillow quickly. I invented that in 2004. I was turned down at all the box stores, just like now, full circle, right? And with box stores, I got no problem with it. But anyway, so someone said, well, why don't you do a kiosk? I said, how do you spell that? I didn't know what a kiosk was. Kiosk. And I remember borrowing, my wife at the time, I borrowed money, I had 4 little kids, I borrowed money to do this kiosk, but remember, I couldn't talk to people. Now, I came out of addiction, or I hadn't come out of addiction yet, but I certainly couldn't go to sell things on high, right? So it was like 2 different people. I would always keep one separate from the other. And I remember doing that kiosk, and I had a big, there you come walking right up to it, right? It was in Eden Prairie. I'll never forget it. And the first day, I think it was the first day I set it up, a couple of customers came up, and I just went, here, you do it. And so she did it. But I was there one other day. It was about 5 days later. I remember I had to do this by myself. And one guy came up. It was the first pillow I ever sold. And he came walking up. And I was telling him about the pillow. And he seemed kind of friendly. He says, "You got a business card?" And I said, "Oh, no, I'm all out." I didn't have a business card. I just wanted a piece of paper. Here you go. And I gave him my number. And about... the kiosk ended then. We had borrowed money. I remember borrowing money to do that kiosk. And we lost it all. We only sold, I don't know, if it just took 10 pillows the whole month and a half. And in January, as I didn't give up, I'm going, what else can I do? What else can I do? And I get this call, and that was that one guy, the one day that I had been there, and he calls up, he says, "Mike, are you the guy that invented this pill?" And I said, he said, "Is this the guy that invented this pill?" And I said, "Yeah." He's here in Minnesota. And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "This pill changed my life." And he goes, "I run the Minneapolis Home and Garden Show. Would you like a spot in there?" And I said, "Sure." And I'm wondering how I'm going to pay for the spot, And, but anyway, I went to the Minneapolis Home and Garden Show, and I changed my booth. I took is that better? I took the table. I put a table in front of me, so I had a shield from the audience or from the people coming up. Right? It was like my safety zone, and I put behind me, guaranteed the most comfortable pillow you'll ever own. And I had all these things in my head that to get people to buy, because I believed in that pillow, and it's never changed since that day. Right? Just so you know, when I invented it was divine. It took over a year to invent, but I sold 18 pillows that day, and I was just going, wow, this is incredible, because I could talk. I could tell them about the pillow. I was so passionate about telling them about it and what it would do. And anyway, they all came back except for one lady the next day. 17 of them paid to get back in that show. It's never happened before or since. And they all came in and said, "This pillow was amazing." And they were almost like, what did this... how did this work? But for me, it wasn't about the money. I'm going, wow, the feeling I had that I had helped someone and helped another one and another one and another one. So I got hooked on selling pillows, right, to help people. And it was funny because I'd go outside of my booth and get back behind the booth. I was having it all the time. It was like, just a minute, I'll talk to you in a second. Okay, come on over here. And to this day, it takes me a while to get going speaking. And I don't need this in front of me. They put that there. I can go there. But I'm in a camera to see it. So anyway, okay, now I'm going to take you to, so I was, like I said, then I got hooked on doing shows. And I would literally have such a passion for going around to home shows and fairs around our state and even surrounding states, but mostly Minnesota. And I loved it. I would meet the people. We'd do home shows everywhere from Princeton to Two Harbors to Fairmont, Minnesota, just everywhere. Winona, up and down, everywhere in the state. And I wouldn't need anything. Remember I had that shield in front of me. Addiction, either mass pain or it gives you false courage. Those are two bad things with addictions. But anyway, so now I'm going to bring you up to where the cover on the book. In 2007, by 2007, the addiction had taken over. You get into crack cocaine, and it's because I switched from cocaine to crack cocaine. And by 2007, we were boxing pillows in our living room, and at the time, then my wife couldn't take them, or she left, and and by the end of 2000, we were divorced in 2007, a 20-year marriage. And it was literally lights out. I think all you that read the book, they were repossessing our house. Remember, this was rolling into 2008. I think I lost 2 houses the same year. I got another one on a contract for deed by losing this one, and then I lost this one. So buying a house right in the middle of all that. But anyway, I had a warrant out for my arrest, and I was going to be found innocent of it. And it was in Chaska. We were working out of a little schoolhouse in Carver, Minnesota. And the pillows, it was going pretty good, with it, doing on multiple people doing shows around the country at that point. And but I had but anyway, downtown Minneapolis, I'd been up for about 14 days, and I came out of the room, and all three of my drug dealers were standing there, and they knew of each other, but they had never met. And I remember, I go, what are you guys doing? And they're looking at me in disgust, and I go, you've been up for 14 days, we're cutting you off. And I'm arguing, I've only been up for 12. But they're all three standing there. The one guy shakes his head and he leaves. He goes, you're not getting anything from me. And the other guy is from the project of Chicago. He went down the streets and got the word out to not sell me anymore. The one guy, Ty, looks over and he says, what do you have left? And I showed him the rocks I had left. And he says, I'm going to wait you out. And he sat in a chair next to me. And about 4 hours later, I'm out of crack and carpet farming, scraping the pipe. And I look over, and he's sound asleep. So I head down the streets of Minneapolis at 2:30 in the morning, right now where everything happens every day down there now, down by Franklin, Park and Franklin, Lake Street, all down there. And I couldn't buy crack anywhere, and there's people everywhere. These are addicts in the street and everything. Nobody would sell me crack. That in itself, you guys, is a little mini miracle, because it changed the course I was on forever. But part of that. Well, anyway, I came back upstairs, and he's waiting for me. This is an hour later. And he says, man, you've been telling us for years that you're going to come back, you're going to quit everything someday, and you're going to come back and help us all out of this addiction world brand. Because I would tell them all the time, it's like me telling myself, I'm going to quit, I'm going to come back and help you guys. I'm going to help everybody get off drugs and get off addiction. And he said, give me your phone. I'm going to take a picture of you for that book you told me you're going to write someday. And this is the picture on there. You see the one that turns? He took that picture in February of 2008. And anyway, I went to sleep I went to bed then, finally. And I remember I woke up 2 days later, and I'm going to tell you this real quick. I get up 2 days later, and I look at my watch, and I'm going, no. Well, I had to get something to my brother. It was with the law labels on the pillow and something else with my pillow. My pillow would not be here if I didn't get this delivered to Carver from Minneapolis that day. And so I took off, and I had a chance going into Carver to be arrested or not. Or not to get arrested before I got there. So I drive it, I get into Carver, and I go into Old Schoolhouse, and there's only one way in and you can't get out, right? There's only one. And I just go up the hill, and who do I pass but Larry the cop? And I get to the top of the hill, and Larry comes flying up behind me, and he's reaching for his gun like Barney Fife, and Mike, stop! And I grab my bag, or the stuff I had to get to my brother, and I stop like this, and I stop, and he goes, I go, Larry, I said, my brother has to get these papers. I said, if he doesn't, it has something to do with the future. Millions and millions of people are going to be affected, something to do with God. And he looks at me, and I didn't know. This is just a dream that I kept seeing. And he goes, and I said, Larry, I know you're going to arrest me anyway. And I said, I'll tell you what, let's do a trade here. I said, I'm going to be found innocent next Tuesday, and if I'm not, you can arrest me anytime, and I promise I'll have cocaine on me. You see? And Larry looks, he goes, all right, go get your brother. Well, or he said, tell your brother to come down. So now I'm going to fast forward. A lot of you have read the book. I'm going to fast forward 9 years go by. And I'm in Carver, Minnesota, and I was invited. Actually, I was invited to Texas Stadium. Remember, this is like 2015 now, right? I've been on TV millions of times. I had this My Pillow. I've been doing all this stuff for people in addiction, putting millions of dollars into Minneapolis. I'm all over the news every day of helping people, from Teen Challenge, Salvation Army. Every station in Minneapolis had me on all the time. It's hard to remember that now because of all the stuff in between, right? And Hurricane Harvey, we gave $2 million of pillows to them, whatever hurricanes, whatever it was, you know? And anyway, so I was invited to go to Texas Stadium by the owner for some foundation thing or something. I don't like going down and networking like that or whatever. He was inviting me for. I knew there was kind of some weird agenda. And I said, no, I'm going to go to my hometown. They're having a parade. I want to throw pillows out to the little kids. So we get down into Carver, and we're sitting on the float, Kendra and I, just ready to go down the hill. And all of a sudden, here, it's just like the old days. I'm kind of looking around. And here comes Larry the cop. He comes pulling up. I hadn't seen him in 9 years. And he gets out of the car. He goes, Mike. I go, Larry. And I jump off that float. And he comes up, he goes, when you write that book, am I going to be in that book? You know what I did for the people? And I said, Larry, I said, do you remember what I told you? And he quoted it verbatim. He said, you said you had something to do with God. Millions of people are going to be affected. I see it on TV all the time. People you're helping in addiction and all this. And I said, you remember what else he said? I said, he goes, yeah, you told me I could arrest you anytime and you'd have cocaine on you. And I go, Larry, why did you believe me? And he looked at me, he goes, Mike, he said, you were always like that. You were so transparent and you told the truth. You just put it out there. And he said, I looked in your eyes and he said, when you said that millions of people will be affected, he says, you believed it, which I did. And so anyway, that picture of Larry and I are in the book for you, those of you that read it. The book goes, as God chased me through my life, and I say, show me more, show me more, show me more. And as that was happening, I would have these 1 in a millions, 1 in a billions, or when do you something that's impossible, well, when do you combine it and call it a miracle for what it is? And that's the way things were for me. But I'm going to tell you what I told last summer at the Oval Office. And this is the day. I remember I didn't quit with those drug dealers. It was a year later. Okay, January 16, 2009. So I'm sitting with the president and Carolyn Levin. All three of us are sitting in the Oval Office, and we were talking about addiction, all the stuff we've been doing. Even in the first term, what we did with the opiate bill, and to help people in addiction throughout our country. These plans for the people in the streets, to have mental issues, to take them off, to bring back the mental institutions. But anyway, getting the faith-based treatment centers, your teen challenges, your Salvation Army. You talked about the opiate bill he did in the first one. But anyway, we're talking about this addiction, and all of a sudden the president goes, Mike, tell Caroline how that day you quit, and how you quit. And because the president, he's heard it a million times. And I said, so I looked at Caroline and I said, it was January 16th, 2009. I said, I knew that if I went one more day, and we all have callings, and I said, I knew mine would be gone. Someone else would be picked. I just knew that with everything I had. That God had picked me for a purpose. We all have purposes, no how big or small, for his purpose. And it was like, I compared it in the book to the drive-in movie theater where you have the second feature you got the first feature and then the second feature. The second feature, that option was going to be gone. It's wherever this first feature was going to take me in my life, which was gone. And then he said, well, Mike, did you have money then? Addicts are resourceful. I made sure I didn't have any money left to show God in my head. Wow, I'll show with God all things are possible and make this great comeback. That's kind of what was in my head. But anyway, I'm telling Caroline, I said, I knew I had this calling, but I said, God, I made a prayer. I said, God, if I got to do this, to quit, I said, I want to be able to quit and never have the desire again. I want to wake up in the morning. It was very specific. I don't want the desire, so I said, I woke up in the morning and something was different. It was gone, and I've never looked back on the desire. And the president looked at Caroline and goes, "Can you believe that?" But his brother had died of alcoholism. We all know that. We talked about it many times, but I told him, like I told everybody, the answer is the Lord. And by the way, I have a Lindell Recovery Network.org. It's to get people off of addiction, and getting off addiction is just a bonus. It's getting to Jesus is the big home run. And as we speak, Keith Ellison has attacked that platform for 2 years. Every this last week, here's some more stuff we have to put up. After the first year, the only thing they could find was a deduction I didn't take because I put in 100% of the money. It's like, what are you worried about my deductions? I'm giving all my money to help people. It was bizarre. Here's this criminal sitting as our attorney general, going out and trying to crush this Muslim, trying to crush Christian programs. And then they said the other day, I think I was on a TV show, they said, well, Mike, why do you think he's doing that? You think because it's a Christian foundation, or you're running for governor? Or, you named a couple. I said, all the above. It doesn't matter. It's just evil, you know. And then my foundation, which my foundation was set up to after I got out of addiction. And by the way, I wasn't saved till February 18, 2017. That's the day I gave my life to Jesus Christ, by the way. And it was, but I had quit, when I quit January 16, 2009, it was such a radical change. I thought that was the day I found the Lord. You know, I always believed I always wore my cross, and even in the crack houses, I wanted to be that person. But anyway, this foundation, when I came out of addiction, I had set up this foundation, and what it was people want to give. And they say, if you listen right now, this all ties in when I am governor, when I'm going to be, it's almost going to be like a plug-in. Well, I go, you know what? When people give, there's a couple of things. Is, you know, you give. It used to be, Ben Carson would talk about this all the time. But you give. I'm going, you know, these things overseas, the commercials he used to see on TV all the time. I think they ruined it. You know, they say, you know, you send us money overseas. The saddest story you heard, and then you wonder if $1 goes in, maybe a dime goes to the charity or to the actual cause. So that bugged me. Then I go, what if you made something where 100% of the money would go to the cause, but a vetted cause, a vetted need, and you knew that, and all the other overhead would be paid by whatever the entity was, i.e. the government, right? So I set this thing up. I put over, I think it was over $12 million I poured into this. Once My Pillow, and there's another story. I'm going to skip today for that part, but when My Pillow, when I got real big, I just poured the money. My Pillow, we have a 10% tithe, no matter what. I put that in there, so if I'm ever going for My Pillow, that they have to give 10% to help people. Even when we've been the most attacked company in history now, and then we're still standing, we still gave money during these last 5 years. But anyway, this what I did in Minneapolis and St. Paul, Rochester, some in St. Cloud, we set up, it was like imagine a big give, send, go board, right? The technology behind it at that time was, I put millions even into the back end, and the videos on there, and all this marketing I did. So you had these vetted needs. We would get the needs from Salvation Army or Union Gospel, and I actually tested it in 106 countries where we got needs, where I was, you know, these needs over there, like, and you tell the story, whatever the need was. Let's say it's we'll use a welfare program. Let's say it's people with autism. Well, let's say somebody with kids with autism. So you had the square, and now you got people over here that want to give. I don't care, millionaires, billionaires, it doesn't matter how much money you have. And you go on there and you go, wow, I want to help out this. People want to help. As you filter down, people will give more money if they're passionate for whatever that need is. Maybe they have someone in their family that has addiction, so they want to help this addiction. Or if it's in their own backyard. The filter, as you filter down, and you'll see, it's closer it gets to you have to put more money in there, okay? So I built this elaborate website where you could filter down to your city, down to your town. And I was the government, and I wrapped around this, and I had teams, like I say, millions of dollars, set up the videos and do this. And now we put it out there into the private sector. And people filled those. We tested it in Detroit, Michigan. They filled them up. It was like, they got so addicted to giving, I almost had to use my recovery network because they were giving so much, right? And, it worked, okay? And here you're getting, so the money was pouring in, and when we did that in Detroit, remember, I was the government, so like, let's say it was like the government, right? I was just going to do it the rest of my life. I figured I would just do this, and this is what's going to be what I did. I would help people with the recovery network to Jesus. I would help all the people that need these and getting other people involved. And it saved almost 40%. So now I'm going to tell you this. People ask me about our 24 welfare programs we had and the fraud we have right now. You take the fraud out of it. Now you vet those, which I'm doing right now as we speak. I'm going right down the line. So if when I do become governor, I'm going to be ready, just like the president was the last 5 years. You take one program. Let's take one let's say there's one that doesn't have fraud in it, okay? We won't spend a lot of time looking for that, okay? We'll take the program, but you get the fraud out. If it's not gone, believe me, by the time I'm put in as governor, we will go after each and every one of them, which is mostly politicians, I think, behind a lot of this. But let's say you have a program. So you look at this particular program, and you look at it and you say, does this give you, look at it like a businessman, does this give you a good return on your investment as we the people? I mean, if you're, some of them are very much needed. So if there's this one here that's needed, then you tweak it and you make it so people don't live on it. It's got to have an end, right? It's got to have an end. You can't stay like some of these Somalians have been, they all have, 80% of them are still on by the time they got here. This is crazy. This is nonsense. So you set these up. The savings is in the billions upon billions of dollars. That's where the money is gone in our country, and in Minnesota. It's these programs, not just the fraud. Everyone get that? It's they're stupid programs. They don't help people, or there are people living on them. You're not helping them at all to just enabling to sit there. And that's where you set up things that work, and that's my wheelhouse. This is when people say, well, Mike, how are you going to get the vote downtown Minneapolis? I said, I live there. I'm going to go down there to my friends and say, I'm voting for Mike Lindell. They're going to say, because of this, this, and this. And then we're going to make commercials out of it. They'll convince the other Democrats to vote, right? And you think about that, if that works with anything, by the way, too, whether it's farmers. I met with the farmers, I met with the teachers. This is what I do every day, is I'm meeting with different groups and trying to get these ready. What's going to be the problems to solve the solutions to these problems, but then to do video or to do commercials, okay, like we did. Well, I'll give an example. We did it in Chicago. Rudy Giuliani, by the way, he's fine. He started a show. He works with me on Lindell TV. His first show was 2 nights ago. He was back. But myself and the mayor, we went into the heart of Chicago in the 2024 election. In the summer, the Democrat convention was there. In fact, I shaved my mustache off to speak into the Democrat convention. And why did I do that? You know why I did that? Because let me tell you, the media with me are being attacked for, and we'll get into that in the next segment, are being attacked for 4.5, now 5.5 years. Actually, it goes back to the first time I met Donald Trump, when they took my pillow from an A+ to an F, and they attacked us. But the media learned over the course of attacking me every single day in my pillow. I was in the news every day. In 2021, a lot of times I was number one in the news almost every day. Mike Lindell's been canceled. He's lost retailers. My pillow, because of the election stuff. Now, if we look at that, what the media did is they got smart. They attacked me. I quit attacking because I was getting the word out just like the president did when he won in 2016. You all know that? We're just alike like that. I mean, that thing, I want to get attacked. Come on. It's free. I don't care. I don't care. We talk about it all the time. It's like, but the media got smart. Right here in Minnesota, you wouldn't even know I'm running for governor. The horrible Star and Tribune, then you got Fox News, the local Fox, all the local, they're not having me on. All you see is Damon, Kendall, talking about, you wouldn't even know I'm running. Okay? But we're going to talk about that plan because that's, like Rick said, it was great that Rochester station called me yesterday and I did an hour recording. She asked me everything, what we have, how I'm the only one that can win, how we have the solutions to win. You gotta win. You have to win. I mean, but that's not even the fact that I have all the solutions. Now, if I would lose, or if I wouldn't win the primary, of course I would give every solution to whoever did win because they gotta have that. I don't care who puts it out there. I know Rick was telling me when I first started the campaign, he goes, like all the solutions you have, because I had a lot of them right out of the gate. He goes, the other candidates, the other Republicans are going to copy that. I said, I don't care. I said, look what it did for Kamala when she said, the president said, no tax on tips. 2 days later, the media comes out, and Kamala Harris says, no tax on tips. Whoa. because they hadn't heard it from our president over here, so the media's put, well, that's a great idea, you know. But anyway, they, let's see, where was I? Well, let me take it back now I'm going to go back in time to a little bit before. I'm going to bring you up to the election, and I'm going to bring you all these problems, the solutions, and I'll take questions. I didn't, as I was growing up, you all heard me there. I never voted in my life. I didn't know anything about politics. I thought it didn't matter. I thought politics don't matter. Other than maybe someday I know I can't be the president. You got to be Elvis Presley. But I really didn't. I just ignored it. I didn't think it mattered. I think the highest I ever came to even paying attention was when Jesse Ventura won. I'm going, that's different, right? But I didn't know a Democrat from a Republican. I didn't know a filibuster from a milibuster. I knew nothing. A lot of people, I don't think, knew nothing until these last 4 years, though, by the way. Which I'll tell you in a second why the 2020 election was the most important election ever. If we go to, just let me check something here. Okay, we're good. So, in 2000, I'm going to tell this one pretty fast. A lot of you have already heard it, but in 2015, the spring of 2015, I had a dream that I was going to meet Donald Trump. And I had never, I'm going to meet Donald Trump. I had never watched The Apprentice. I had never read The Art of the Deal. I'd heard about it. I probably lost money in some of his casinos. And that was it. Anyway, a month later, he comes down that escalator, and I go, wait a minute, maybe I do want to meet Donald Trump, right? Well, in my dream, there were pictures behind me, and on the wall, and I drew those pictures. I drew this exact picture of him and I, and these pictures. I wish I had a screen I'd show you, but you guys have seen it in the book. And at that point, I'm going, okay, and they said dreams like these, they actually do come true for me, these certain dreams from God. And if you read my book, and by the way, in my book, everybody says, okay, I have pictures I kept all my life that when this thing would happen, I would save the picture and I go, this is going to be amazing for the book I'm going to write someday. And it could be bad things like I got from the mafia, pay by tonight or your things are going to get very physical. That was in 1982. I kept the bag to put in the book. That's weird, right? But it shows in the book everything, wow, this happened, sure it did. Then you see proof, and it goes on and on through the whole book. Well, by the time you're going, okay, Jesus is real, because if all these things are true, this certainly is, because these couldn't be possible with all, of all these things that happened if you had them all up. So anyway, it was the night before I was on an airplane to California. And I was going to do a movie, it's called Church People. I had paid for the movie and I had a part in the movie. And remember, all I was doing then was going around. I wanted to evangelize, talk about people to get them off addiction, get them to Jesus. But I still had that dream in my head. And now, this is the July of 2016. And Donald Trump's already the candidate against Hillary Clinton. And I get up the plane, and back then, you had to be at 10,000 feet to turn on your internet on your phone. And I bought a magazine about Donald Trump in the Hudson News or whatever it was. And we get up there, and I'm in the bulkhead. I got a foreigner here that can't speak English, and I'm sitting here, and he, I opened this magazine up. I had my phone set. I was looking for, I had real important calls coming in from the movie thing, so I had my phone to ding if I got an email. I never had that. That's even strange for me. So I get up there and I just shut the magazine and I said, I had my phone set and I said, God, I need to know if this was you or, I seen this picture, this dream, been over a year now, and I need to know if I'm supposed to meet Donald Trump or not. And all of a sudden, that exact moment in time, my phone dinged. Mike, this is Donald Trump. Would you meet me in Trump Tower in New York City? And I go, God? Yeah. And I literally start bawling. I'm going, it's a miracle. The flight attendant's going, are you okay? Yes. The guy next to me, he's speaking, blah, 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 when I go, it's okay. I'm talking louder because he can't understand me. It's okay. You know how you do that? It's a miracle. So a month later, we get Kendra and I fly into New York, and there was a miracle that happened this Saturday night. We actually had this, and I haven't told this on stage at all, but we actually had happened to us where we were in a restaurant, and these two were the nuns. They were nuns, came up and sat down next to us and pinched us in. They said, we just wanted to sit down and tell you that we're praying for you. You have something so important come up, it's going to change everything. And they said that. I'm going, well, no, that's weird. And then we got to a church, and the pastor at the church, he came out afterwards and he grabbed us. I never met him before. He just, knew me from TV. And he said, something's going to happen to you very soon. It's going to change things. You need to pray. God's got you and all this. So for me, things like this would happen all the time. So it wasn't like that out of the ordinary, to be honest with you. But anyway, I should have told one about the three people in the middle of the night, but that's okay. You guys got to hear this one. Okay, you want to hear this one? Okay, this is in the book. Back in 2008, after the drug dealers did that intervention, I didn't quit that year. Things kept happening that year, and one of the things that was happening one fateful night, I was up doing cocaine, and I was looking. There was a website called The Devil's Candy. That guy passed away since I helped him out when I came clean. But it was The Devil's Candy. It told me how to get off crack through Jesus. And I would just sit there and go over and over and watch this. But I'm doing cocaine. Now back then, I was the only person that had the call center for my pillow. It was just me. So I didn't have any business. But I had done this show, and a local Christian lady had put me on her show. She had filmed me one time. I came downtown. She had seen me at a home show. She said, Mike, if you're ever downtown, stop in. And she said, and see the studio. And I said, I probably, I could maybe put you on our public access channel. It's a Christian thing. I said, sure. And so, but I happened to be going down there one day to get drugs from my dealer in Minneapolis. And so I called her up, and I said, yeah, I can stop in and see it, because I couldn't get him for another half hour. So I stopped in her station. She shows me, and she goes, Mike, you can go on right now. His name is Mike Woodley, okay? And he says, this guy, we're going live right now on TV. And I go, no, I'll be back. I can come back and I needed my drugs, right? I go, no, I'll be back. No, you go on, you'll be fine. And so I go on this station. By the way, I'm looking away from the camera. It's the funniest thing I've ever seen. I didn't know we were live, and I'm over here looking. I have a pillow. But anyway, she would play that over and over, like in the middle of the night, like 3 a.m, and she'd run this on her public access channel. And I would get sales from it, at that time. And I'd take these sales at 3 a.m. It's probably up anyway. And anyway, one fateful night, I'm sitting there doing the cocaine, and I'm on the Devil's Candy site, and this lady calls up at 8 o'clock, and she says, say, are you the guy on TV? She said, with the pillow, she said, I don't need a pillow, but she said, God told me I'm supposed to call and pray for you. I need to pray for you. And I go, sure, go, and I'll pray. So she's praying away, and I'm putting her on mute and doing lines. But I'm listening, right? I'm listening. And this goes on for 45 minutes. She wouldn't stop praying. She's praying. I'm going, yes. But I wanted to hear what she had to say. And anyway, it ends, and she said, thanks. She hangs up. 11 or 10 o'clock that night, another call. I'm going, oh, this, and she goes, yeah, she actually had a boutique in Minneapolis, and she says, I've seen you on Channel 6. She said, I have one of your pillows, but she said, God keeps telling me to call and pray for you. I said, okay. So she says, can you pray with me? I said, sure. So she's praying, same thing. She went on for probably till midnight. She just kept praying, and she goes, God, I get this so strong that you have a calling in your life, and all this, and something to do with a platform. She was saying, you're going to have a big platform, and I'd be her doing her cocaine, and this went on, right? So then at 3 o'clock in the morning, this guy calls me up, and he goes, are you this guy on TV? And I said, yeah. And he goes, well, I don't believe in God. And he said, but I keep getting this dream that I'm supposed to call you and what you're doing is so important to God. And he said, so I hope my dreams stop now, you jerk. Well, excuse me, right? I mean, I couldn't believe it. And this is all the same night. Then at 8 o'clock in the morning, the last call comes in. And the guy, and this lady, I get on the phone and go, you don't want to buy a pill, you want to pray for me. She said, how did you know? I said, it seems to be the thing tonight, right? And two of them I'm still friends to this day with, by the way. But, and by the way, two of those drug dealers are born-again Christians. They work for me. So anyway, back to the summer of 2016. I'm overlooking Central Park. It's 3 in the morning. The meeting with Donald Trump is at 10 a.m. And 2 nights before, I had met Rudy Giuliani at this place, just so random. And Ronna Graff, who was Donald Trump's longtime secretary, assistant, like 20 years. So it was this big party thing that I shouldn't have been there. And here I'm there. I couldn't talk to anybody, but those two kept talking to me, and Rudy was easy to talk to, and so was she. So keep that in your head. Now 2 days, now it's Monday. I'm overlooking Central Park at 3 in the morning, and I just got this overwhelming feeling. I almost started crying and going, God, why me? I felt like it would change stuff for all of us. Everything. It would just change everything. If I overslept, I didn't even know what I was going to say when I went in there. I didn't know what it all meant, but I was told this. Now, you're never going to meet him alone. Whatever you do, don't tell him you did crack. And I'm going, okay. Well, in my dream, we were alone. So anyway, we get up to the floor there. There's 6 people with me. We get in there, and it's 9:45. And Eric Trump, I never met him before. He comes down and peels off 2 or 3 of them. Says, "You 3 got to come with me." And I don't know what these guys thought, if I was going to donate money or something. I had no idea why there were so many of them. They're lined up like cordwood, and then here comes another guy. His phone ring. The guy gets him. He's gone. Now it's 5 minutes to 10. They take another guy. Now it's just one guy and me, and it's 10 o'clock. I'm supposed to go in, and his phone rings at that exact moment in time. And he's walking. He goes, hello. He goes, this is really important. Hold on. And he starts taking this call. And now the miracle I'd seen Ronna that 2 days before, she's seen me from here to that entrance. It's a long hall. She comes running up there. She goes, you don't have to wait for them. Come on, Mike. She brings me all the way back down around the corner. She says he's in there, walks away. And I come walking in. It's just the president, Donald Trump and myself. I come walking out, but just like in my dream. And he goes, Mike, you always wear your cross? I said, yes, Mr. Trump, and this is a divine appointment. He said, are you a Christian? I said, yeah. And anyway, it was like 2 people. It was like, there was no fear of talking. It was like absolutely amazing. Like 2 people that were brothers that had known each other forever. And we just started talking back and forth. I'm like, I'm in an intro. I said, I used to be a crack addict. And he goes, and I said, I'm going to have this recovery network, and I said, it's going to help millions. And he goes, I'm going to shut down the border and stop these drugs pouring in. But 2 businessmen talking for almost 40 minutes. And it was amazing. And then he goes, Mike, I got to write this speech in Ohio. He said, I haven't even looked at it yet, so I took that as a cue to leave. And I'm walking out, I'm almost to the door. Remember, I didn't have that picture. And here comes Rudy Giuliani that I met 2 nights ago by divine. Comes walking around the corner singing the Mike Pillow jingle, for the best night's sleep. And Rudy, now that made us, like the president, Mr. Trump at the time, he goes, come on in, you two know each other, whatever. We all 3 sat down again. And then there was something I had to give him that was really important. And I was able to tell him that this was to help win the 2016 election. And anyway, then Rudy ended up taking that picture that's in the book that was almost exactly behind me. But from that point on, I came back to Minnesota, and I did a press release that I had met Donald Trump, and I talked to all his employees, met Cameron and I. They all said the same thing: great man, great leader, and they had all done. He had done something for each one of them that nobody knew about personally to help them out. Let's say their house was, something happened to them. All of them had that story. We probably talked to 20, 30 people. And because I couldn't believe this guy just met, I'm going, he had no agenda, right? I said, here's a guy, an entrepreneur, an ex-addict from Minnesota, and he went to my opinion, right? And I get back here to Minnesota, and I was the media's darling at the time. Mike, how many more millions are you going to pour into Minneapolis? How many more veterans are you hiring? How many more addicts are you hiring at My Pillow, second chances? And there'd be every outlet you could in the nation. I knew them all. When I got back to Minnesota and I did a press release against my board, they go, Mike, you're going to lose half our business. I said, why would I? Because I met this man. I didn't know politics was like that. I had no clue. You're going to lose half our business. I met him. I'm going to do this. I'm going to say, I put it out, and so I put out a press release. I didn't even say what we talked about. I thought the media is going to come, and then I would be able to tell them. I would get the word out, right? But the press release, and it was the biggest attack at that time, probably in history. I mean, it was just, other than they attacked Donald Trump. The Minneapolis Tribune, one of the comments there was Mike Lindell, the biggest drug dealer in the Twin Cities. And my drug dealers came forward and go, he never dealt a drug in his life. He tried to rid Minneapolis of drugs by doing them all. And I'm going, seriously, I never dealt a drug in my life, but all these attacks and these lies for the media. And then they took after My Pillow, the Crooked Better Business Bureau, which started in the state of Minnesota, by the way, took My Pillow from an A+ to an F. Did you all know that? We were up for their highest award, their torch award, as the best company in the United States. We were up for that award, and because I went all in for Donald Trump, they took me from an A+ to an F. You can't make this stuff up. It's still an F to this day, though. I didn't fight it. I left it there, and I've been bad-mouthing the Better Business Bureau ever since. They wanted me to come in and all this. I said, no, just leave it in that. That's just fantastic.
Yep.
But you understand, by that time, you all knew who I was. And but millions of pillows had been sold. It was too late for them to attack me. I didn't change. I was that same person that 2 days prior, My Pillow just hired all these homeless and addicts and put millions into this. And then the next day, we're supposed to believe that we're the worst thing on the planet. Nobody bought it, Kind of very similar to Donald Trump when he came down that escalator. He was a Democrat. He was everybody's here. The American dream, right? And then everyone's going, why are they doing this to him? But he was able to get elected because of them. You guys got to remember, evil is greedy. This is our biggest advantage. Evil is greedy. And now I'm going to tell you, I'm going to run it all the way up now to the 2020 election. So this segment here, then I went all in, as you all know, with the president. I campaigned for 4 years. I did Jason Lewis here in Minnesota. I just held campaigns, and I did rallies with the president. And I was co-chair in Minnesota here for the 2020 election. And some of the things we did then is what I'm going to tell you that we're going to duplicate here in Minnesota now. But anyway, the 2020 election, and by the way, I'm going to tell you this little thing. So that in 2020, 2 weeks before the election, remember I had millions of dollars worth of masks before I knew they didn't work? Okay? And Waltz put out a thing. He said, we need masks. Minnesota needs masks. So I was going to give them to the state of Minnesota. I didn't care. I said, well, yeah, we'll donate them. We called the governor's office, and we get a call back from this probably a second in command. She's just evil. She says, the governor, we've decided we're not going to accept him for My Pillow until after the election. In other words, because I was so branded with Donald Trump. You follow that? This is 2 weeks prior. And I'm sorry, did I have intent? Yeah, I thought it'd be kind of cool because I was branded with the president, right? But still, I would give him no matter what. We were giving stuff away all the time. But he didn't want that to make headlines. You follow me? So here, I said, no, you're going to do it now. I said, or I'm going to tell the whole state that the media and everybody that you are turning this down because we're My Pillow and Mike Lindell. So they come back to me and she says, okay, we'll do it, but the media, if there's any media, they're going to have to stay a block away. And I said, fine. So this was 2 days later now. That lady, I think she got the virus, I don't know. And she was sick. Okay? So she was sick. I really think she got the China virus that day because she didn't show up. So I get down there and here's this other gal, and she comes up and she's a big fan, and she goes, we come rolling in, and the truck wasn't there. The truck was coming behind me. And she says, Mike, she says, She says, you are so, and she's telling me these things that I've been doing. She goes, you would make such a great governor. And because the rumors had that I was going to run in 2022, okay? But she just said that, and I go, you know what? I am going to run in 2022, I think. And she goes, I can't stand my, Waltz, right? So, and he said, I said, you told me the office said I had to park but the media had to be a block away. We did call the media. And so they were pulling up in their trucks. You don't have to have them a block away. She said, put them right here. So they're right in front of me, right in front of us, all of them. And here comes the My Pillow truck, comes flying around the side. And the first thing this lady says, she goes, one might make a great governor. I said that going, wow, I was going to try and slip that in, right? And she got fired that day. She was quitting anyway. It was great for her. She got to say everything. She goes, we have such a bad governor. But anyway, so that went on. It was just interesting. And but Waltz and I went back and forth when they tried to shut down shut our churches when they shut down. I called the governor's office. I said, if we don't get these open, why the mosque is open, right? They're ringing the bells off for the Sharia law downtown and stuff. But when you have the churches, I said, if these aren't all open all the time, I said, I'm going to take these masks. Remember, I didn't know they didn't work. And I said, I'm going to distribute them all over Minnesota to every church and tell them they can pick them up on Sunday mornings and you can loiter and listen. It was a great marketing plan, but he kept them all open and he opened them back up. Anyway, we got the 2020 election, and I'm going to start from that right there. The first night, you guys, right now, our hope, you know where hope happened? I consider this probably the biggest miracle of all, which is the 2020 election is the biggest miracle, biggest election, the most important election in history. I'm going to tell you what, kind of like the fraud right now in Minnesota is one of the most important things you can ever imagine right now. What I'm going to tell you how I'm going to use that. We have a door that's opened up that no man can shut right now. We've got to go through that door, and we use that to win this election. That's it. It happened a week after I announced. I go, thank you, God. Give me something real bad on these guys. We had plenty, right? And anyway, so I'm going to tell you, on the night of that election, my wife and I were in New York City, in Washington, D.C., we're at Trump Hotel, and by 11 o'clock, it's over. He's going to win, but we all had that weird feeling. Everyone did. He had this weird feeling that it was just the strangest feeling ever, even though he was just blowing everything, winning everything. My buddy had bet on the states in Vegas, and the odds of losing at that point were zero. It was like 99%. It's like the Vikings' biggest comeback in history against Indianapolis. You all seen that? This is where we are sitting. And then this impossibility happens overnight, and they stop everything. You all know the 106 votes come down for Biden in the middle of the night in Michigan, 3,000 for Donald Trump. They tell us, you know what? Those darn inner city votes, those Democrats, well, there's a big problem is the votes in Michigan were counted on the morning of the 3rd, the mail-in votes. Not in the middle of the night on the 4th. But any time, if any one of them would have been overturned and looked at, like we tried to look at Pennsylvania having more votes than voters, I can look back now, and I've told this to the president many times. If any one of them, if the media evil one had tried to just stop everything, which they did, if they wouldn't have done that, and if they would have overturned it, we'd have lost our country forever. Donald Trump was not ready. If he went back in then, if I'd have been evil, I said, give it back to him. I said, give it back to him. Let us sit there. We'll keep attacking for 4 years, and then we'll just destroy this country. Okay? But here's what happened. That night, when you skim a casino, everybody, when the mafia skims a casino, I used to be a professional card counter too. And in a casino, you skim everything. From the food, to the craps table, to the roulette table. You can't just skim one thing, or it stands out. Where's the money for this one? Or if you have this much money went into food, you have all this food, all the machines should be up this much. You follow me? It's all relative. All the numbers are related. I took calculus in 8th grade. This is what I do every day. I work my whole company. Everything I do is on deviation, mathematical deviations. You need a different input to get a different output, especially the more data you have, the more you have for your baseline and sequences and everything. So that night, They miscalculated. There was a miracle that happened when they did polling and they're calling people, the Eagles calling people, who you vote for. So many people would not say Donald Trump. You follow this? And plus, in spite of, so they had to know how much to cheat. You have to have your baseline. They predicted he would get 68 million votes max. They didn't want to go higher than that and be off, because then it's gonna look really bad that Biden would win by way too much. You follow me? So you got to do that prediction. So they did. And they predicted low by about 12 million votes. Donald Trump got really close to 80 million. Biden got about 65, just so you all know. Now, when they did this and they skimmed, imagine a water level. You only got this much water that you're going in. And you got to have that water level. It's got to go up over those states that we're going to, that's all those swing states. Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Georgia, and Arizona. He was going to win that in spite of there was enough water to rise. You follow me? There wasn't enough left of the legal voters. So that's the miracle. If they would have predicted right, if they would have just predicted right, that one miracle, they would have won. He would have won all those swing states. That everything would have been counted by 1 a.m. Biden would have won, and we wouldn't be talking here. You know what we've said? I wouldn't have gotten involved. We would have said, you know what? We took God out of our country, a nation turned its back on God. Our children are this generation, they all like transvestites and all this weird, crazy stuff, men and women's sports. We would have thought we were the minority. Isn't that how you all felt then? But in fact, I can tell you right now, that's a whole other story. This country is 65% red. Did you know that? That's what we are. These are the numbers we extrapolated from Florida, where we finally found machines there were machines in the 2022 election where we finally got the cast vote records, which you can get under the Freedom of Information Act. We finally got them. We finally had an example. What would it be if you had a vote if you had an election without machines? You know, because for some reason they did no cheating in Florida with the machines in the 2022 election with DeSantis. So we finally had that. I'm on my show and I go, wait a minute, DeSantis won Miami-Dade County by 12 points. We got to look into that. So we went and got the cast vote records of the public. We can all get them. And we got them. And sure enough, a cast vote record, by the way, is if you miss a Viking game and you see first, it's the order the votes come in. So 7-7 first quarter, 14-14 second quarter, third quarter, 21-3. Wait a minute. And then you turn the channel and all the scores are the same. Okay? That's what a cast vote record is. A cast vote record will either show computer manipulation or it won't. There's nothing in between. Numbers don't go in reverse. It's simple arithmetic, right? And so if you have a cast vote record in the 2020 election, when my teams gathered them all in the summer of 2022, the states have to hold them for 2 months, 22 months. And so 22 months was September 3rd of 2022. And I found out about cast vote records in June of 2022. This isn't all the evidence I got on January 9th. Remember, there's only one truth here. Everything you hear from the Tina Peters just getting out and the evidence we had, her image she had, my evidence I had from Dennis Montgomery, all the cast vote records, all the canvassing my teams did in this country of 300,000 strong when I built this network up to, all those teams, every camera angle, it's the same crime, just a different angle. So anyway, with the cast vote records, in the 2020 election, we were able to get 1,100 cast vote records out of the 3,243 counties in the United States. Every one of them was computer manipulated. Doesn't mean they were flipped. They just were computer manipulated, okay? That's all that means, right? At that point. Now, in the 2022 election, we only did that because the states wouldn't give it to it. By the way, Minnesota says, if we know what a cast vote record is, you can't have it. That's what they told us. You can't make it up, right? They expect it here. And anyway, in 2022, we were able to get 540 cast vote records because a lot of states wouldn't give it to us anymore. And most of them were red states. Arkansas, Alabama, Louisiana, states you wouldn't expect. You thought they would cooperate. You know what they did in San Francisco? These are Democrats. They come and ask them for passport records. They were smart. They put them up on their website. They literally put them up on their website. We thought it's what we're supposed to have. That blew my mind. So I'm going to these red states going, hey, give us your passport records. They post them. It's all right. It's the one thing we can get in our elections under the Freedom of Information Act, and they're holding them back. And you think that's not a deviation when you have a red state? These uniparty Republicans and these Republicans if you can have deviations in numbers, but look for deviations in behavior. That's what I did. All the politicians the last 5 years that I've had to meet, the Secretary of States I met, and I met almost them all, and almost all the Attorney General. A Secretary of States, there's only 2 in the United States I wouldn't even allow in my house alone. And of the Attorney Generals, there's probably about 10 or 12. There are some good ones out there. But this is what I looked at. I go, you gotta be kidding me. This is running our country. It's disgusting. But it was terrible. I go down to Alabama in the summer of 21. They said, I bought every voter roll in the United States, spent millions of dollars. I go to Alabama in August of 2021. The president and I were down there. By this we had become great friends. We're down in Alabama, and he did a rally, his first rally. He flew out of it. I got introduced to John Merrill, the Secretary of State. So I go in and buy Alabama's voter rolls. It's $42,000 they charge me. I'm going, you should give it to me. We're trying to save the country here. You're a Republican, right? So I get in there to John after my team looked at these voter rolls. By then it was hired I spent $80 million on all that fraud. But with all this stuff, I've got hiring all these cyber guys and everything to look at these voter rolls. The voter rolls, that didn't even take cyber guys. You get them from Alabama, here's who voted. I go, John, you have 4,662 people in Alabama that voted that were over 110 years old. Some of them were over 140. And he looked at me, he goes, well, Mike, we live pretty good here in Alabama. I'm going, okay, that's pretty funny, John. But now let's get on to business. What are you going to do about this? You know what he did? He took a picture of me, he wanted a picture, brought me upstairs to meet their horrible governor, who's a Democrat. She wanted a picture. They want a picture. I leave, and my teams, they had a thing with their machines. The brand they had ES&S and Dominion, I believe. Minnesota here, we have all three. Anyway, they take the pictures, and my team sent a week later, or 2 weeks later, when they were testing machines where you could go where they were actually testing, we had teams going with counterfeit paper and just go down to the FedEx store, buy typing paper, mocked it up, put them in, they was accepting them all. And then we put that out. I called John on his phone. I go, John, you got test stuff going all over Alabama. My teams are undercover. Here's what's happening. You know what he did? He shut it down. He wouldn't let any more public in, and he bought more machines to monitor the machines in the next election. You can't make it up. But anyway, so we had as we roll into, I said the 2020, that night, you see how that's a miracle, that the deviations that they estimated wrong, because when they shut everything down, it raised a flag of this country's never seen before. And we all go, there's something terribly wrong. This has never happened before. What do you mean 5 states stopped? One of them, people are pulling things in Georgia out from underneath because there was a bathroom break, a pipe breakage. What do you mean Pennsylvania had more votes than voters? What do you mean they voted a week later and 900,000 votes came in after the fact? What do you mean in Arizona it took 2 weeks to count 1%, and the 1% that was left was 150,000 Republican votes and 20,000 Democrat, and nobody was watching Arizona. I was. And all 5 of those states go to the Democrats. So, but if it wouldn't have happened, we'd have lost our country forever. This is what I'm saying. Now I'm going to quick bring you up through January 4th. Remember the Senate run out the 2 senators? Remember the 2 senators in Georgia? We're all praying that we get one, right? I'm with Kendra and the president. We're down in Georgia for that big rally. 80,000 people on January 4th. And all of a sudden it hit me. I'm a marketer. So I said, what if I was Evil's marketer? That's what the president and I always talk. He said, Mike, what would you do if you were them? And that's what we talk about all the time. Just texting this morning, we were texting about Tina Peters and how happy he is that and by the way, the pressure he put on got her out. I'm telling you. God bless her. And we sat there in Georgia, and I remember I don't even think I told Kendra, and I just started praying, please God, let them still both have senators. And you're going, why would you do that? Now think about this. I go, you know what? If I was evil's marketer, I would have said, when I say evil, you guys can call it Democrat, call it whatever you want, but this is evil, okay? So if I was them, I would have said, and I'm in a boardroom with them, and I said, you guys, we got to give them back a Republican so they shut up about this election. We're caught. They're onto us. They're onto the computers, the machines. They're onto our dirty voter roll. They're onto everything. We've done everything we can to cover it up. Remember, you had Suckerbuck's Facebook putting false information over everything. You had Jack Dorsey's crooked Twitter covering things up. I couldn't even do a post. I'd go to hit the button and say false information. It was crazy. And the new amnesia is everybody's a liar. Fox News turned on us. Remember that? Controlled opposition. Fox was in on it, just so you know that. I got shirts that say, don't go Fox on me. You will never see any election stuff on Fox News when it comes to machines or paper ballots. Nobody's been able to go on Fox or Newsmax since Smartmatic sued Fox on February 4th of 2021. But anyway, so here I am praying. If they would have gave back a Republican, here's what would have happened. Everyone would have said, maybe not you guys, maybe not me, but I bet it would have been in vain. They'd have said, Mike, don't worry about the election. We still have the Senate. We'll get them back in 2022. Same old, right? Like this midterm. Oh, it usually goes back the other way now. How many times you heard that garbage? Oh yeah, it's going to go back. It's going to go back. Remember, we're 65% red in this country. The only reason they lied to us and convinced us it's a 50-50, and it has been for years. It has not been. They've had the media and this criminal system to steal our elections. That's it. Okay? Yeah. So, I'm sitting there in Georgia, and now when they took them both, my prayers were answered. What did y'all do? What are we going to do? Maybe there was election crime. Half the country's going, there's got to be something. But evil had a backup plan, and that was January 6th. Evil had that plan. That was their safety net. Just steal them both. Who cares? We got it. It's over. We got January 6th plan. And now I'm going to tell you, and I do it every speech, the two most important dates for hope come right now, what I'm going to tell you. This was the genesis of our hope. On January 7th and 8th of 2021, 1.2 million Americans were deplatformed those 2 days. Off Vimeo, YouTube, Zuckerbuck's Facebook, Jack Dorsey's crooked Twitter. The president lost 100 million followers. He lost his voice in a blink of an eye. Okay? The Parler that was set up, you all remember Parler? Parler was set up as an alternative platform because they were worried. They're going, these crooked platforms over here. So Parler was set up by conservative Christians, this big social media platform. They wiped Parler out in 1 hour. Now, who was on the back end? Your Googles of the world, the Amazon, whatever they had servers, where the servers were on, just destroyed it. So now I compared, and I love the comparison. And when I was growing up, I had black and white TVs. I know some of you are old enough to remember them. And we turned them on as kids, and the lights would go out, and it would go down to this little tiny dot that would just kind of live there. And then before that dot would go out, you'd turn it on, it would come back to life. The kids would go, my dot was smaller, whatever. Well, it was fun to do that. It just kept choo, choo, choo. And well, that dot was our voice. Our voice. They wanted to kill our voice that day, and it didn't go out. If that dot went out, I'm telling you, it's over. It's all about the voice. It's all about communication. It's all about knowing. Why do you think I ran for 40-some years? The people didn't wake up there till the early 2000s, which is another generation, because the internet came in and it was leaking into there that there was a better way of life somewhere. You follow me? They just cut that off. North Korea is a perfect example. You just cut everything off. You don't know if there's something better. You don't know. But we knew there was something better, but if you kill our voice, it don't matter. They had to do every single, by having the media, and they had a plan for that too. But I'm going to tell you, so where I come into this on January 9th, this is one of the biggest miracles for me. And I knew by this point, I knew that because of all my investigations, like Wisconsin, I don't know, 12,000 people voted there when I got their voter rolls that didn't live there. And I'm going, wait a minute. I couldn't imagine getting a whole group of people, 12,000 people. People are genuinely good people going, all right, everybody, who's with me? We're going to go jump into Wisconsin and commit a crime and vote for Biden. Come on, let's go. It'd be like that movie, I'd look back and there's nobody there, right? So I knew it had to be done with computers, and we get a call that day, January 9th and 10th, about a guy named Dennis Montgomery who worked for the CIA. True story, back in Brennan and Clapper took this device and turned it on our country. By the way, you're going to see a lot of stuff coming out about Brennan and Clapper. This little thing that you heard. You heard this here first. This is right now happening, everybody. I knew this back then, on January 9th and 10th of 20. And we got the call. Kendra was with me on the couch at her house, and it was so divine and going, wow. Here I got this, but all it had to do was be signed by the president because it was under a government protective order with the CIA. All I had to do, so all I got to do is get to the White House. He signs this. It can be opened up to the country. We save our country. And everybody goes, oh, and Donald Trump's in. But no, and so I'll cut that short. I get to by a miracle, get to the president on January 15th. And just checking time. Yeah. I got to tell you this part. Have you guys all heard this part? Okay, so I get to the White House by a miracle. This is January 15th, 9 days after January 6th. Okay, this is my story from my thing, what happened in my life at that time. And remember, I was still sounding the alarm because I had all this logical evidence that I had done. I had bought the voter rolls, and I'm trying to get the word out, but I kept Suckerbuck would cover everything I had up, and Twitter's over here going, Mike's false information and all this stuff, and it was just a battle. And anyway, again, we get this by divine appointment. We end up getting to the White House. There's 12 of us, and they all waited for me, and there were blockers, believe me, to get in there. And I get in there, and I'm going to get 5 minutes. They said, I get into the White House, and I get into the Oval Office, and I've got now with me, I have the evidence from Dennis Montgomery, these sheets of evidence. I just had 3 sheets as a sample, and it would have to get to Radcliffe, who, by the way, was head of the DNI. Radcliffe put out a thing on January 7th to the nation that China had interfered in our election. Are you all aware of that? This is on January 7th, but it got lost in the news on January 6th. On January 7th, when 1.2 million got deplatformed, if you spoke out about Jesus Christ against the vaccine or against the election, you were all put in that same group. And the people that were left over here that didn't have anything over here, they were afraid to breathe because of January 6th. I put a post out on Facebook just on my family thing, and no one's liking it. I thought I was getting shadow banned. No, they were afraid to hit the button. It was terrible. Our voice was that small. Well, anyway, on January 9th or on January 15th, so I get in the Oval Office. On the way there, before I left, I got a thing from these lawyers, an envelope, sealed envelope that said, if you get this to the president, Mike, just give it to him. If you get it, if you happen to get it, we tried to get it to him. It's recommendations to save our country. Envelope sealed. Get into the Oval Office, sit down for the president. Mark Meadows, his chief of staff, is here. This guy named Robert O'Brien, he's head of he's the top guy for the strategy or whatever, the chief strategist for the nation or whatever it is. I can't even think of his title. Here's Robert O'Brien. I get in there, I show the president, I got the evidence. We're going to save the country. You really wanted all this. And he's looking at it. I said, you just got to sign this sheet. And I said, you can release it. He can release it to the nation. All of this cyber evidence, it's like a movie from the 2020 election. He had it all. And the president's looking at that, and Robert O'Brien, and then he goes to Mark Meadows. He said, does John Radcliffe know about this? He says, we've been hearing a lot about Dennis Montgomery, but we don't know Hammer's scorecard. He said he can't find the name, and I said, well, I'm sure they changed the name. Who cares? Give him the stuff. So anyway, so Mark actually walked out of the office. I don't know if he was going to check with him or what. But at that time then, Robert O'Brien goes, "Sir, you don't need it. If you sign that, and we have this going on, and this gets brought up, the left's going to go absolutely crazy." He goes, "Just protect your legacy and just let this lay, because this is." He starts here with this to tell the president not to do anything, and I flipped out. You could have heard me all the way to Virginia. I'm going, "You blah 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 blah," and I'm screaming. The president's just sitting back like this. Secret Service is out there. Oh, that's just Mike yelling at something, right? It's actually giving them hope. They're hearing me yell, right? Nobody came into the Oval Office and I was yelling so loud for at least a minute straight at this guy. And just, I'm almost in tears going, "Are you nuts? We have a country here." I'm screaming at him. I sit down and I'm waiting for the president's reaction, and I couldn't even yell anymore, right? I'm going, this guy just sitting there, All of a sudden the president goes, and I said, "Sir," and also, and then I grabbed that other envelope out of my suit, and I said, "Here, these lawyers said, these are recommendations for you too if I got to see you." He opens up the envelope, he pulls it out. The first one he reads, "Fire Robert O'Brien." I go, you can't make this up. I'm going, "You can't make that up." It's just like, "Wow, this is beautiful." And so that brought me hope, right? I go, it's all coming together, I mean, the president, I wonder what he thinks to this day. I've never asked him that. What are the odds he opens up, the first thing is fire this guy just yelled at for 5 minutes, right? They bring me upstairs. He goes, "Bring Mike up to the lawyers and bring him back, see what he has here." Brings me upstairs to the lawyers. Robert O'Brien leaves. This guy comes out of the office in about 10 minutes, and he hands those papers that I had just given the president for the lawyers, right, and my evidence pieces. He gives them back to this gal and says, "Here, give them to him." She told me, they're whispering, "Give them to him." I find out later he was the lawyer, right? I didn't know he was, and there's 3 gals sitting here. So she gives me back my papers. Or no, she brings me downstairs to the West Wing, and she hands me back all these papers in a big blob, right? I'm hanging on to them, and she goes, "They're probably not going to be able to meet you for it'll be at least a couple hours." She said, they're not going to be able to meet you today. And I flipped out again. "No, we're meeting today." She said, "Well, it could be like 2 hours." I said, "I don't care if I have to wait here. What's wrong with you people? We're losing our country." I couldn't even believe it, right? And so I yell at her. She goes back upstairs. And now I'm sitting there. I got my friends, the Secret Service. We're taking pictures. And the gal sitting here, she had seen me in the White House quite a bit. And I said, and I asked her this, and this is impossible, you guys. I said, "Do you mind if I use my phone?" Now the phones get put away. We're right by the West Wing there where you have the Marine out there that's always standing there. Right? You've seen the pictures. And she goes, "Yeah, Mike, go ahead." So because I had to call my son, and I walked out past that Marine. There's nobody out there. And I'm sitting there like this talking to my son. Now you've all seen that picture. It's the most seen picture in 2020, maybe in history, where I'm like this. I look like a secret agent up against the White House there, and it says martial law on that paper that I've never read. So the Washington Post took that from a quarter mile away with a telescopic lens. Okay? Now, if that hadn't happened, I don't believe we'd be sitting here, and I'm going to tell you why. So here's what happened. I'm sitting on the phone with my son, and all of a sudden I look up, and there's like a herd of buffalo coming over the horizon, but it's news media running with their cameras. I go, whoa. I mean, there was a wall of them, right? Well, they had just heard Mike Lindell's outside the White House with martial law papers. I didn't know this. So they all come running. I go, "Dear," and I got to go. I hang out. They all come out. They stop. There's where they have to stop. They can't go any further. And I go, "Would y'all like me to answer some questions?" And I go, I kind of smile. I go, "You know what? I changed my mind. Y'all find something really nice to say about me." And I turn to walk back in the White House, right? Well, little did I know what was going to happen next, right? So I get in the White House, and here comes the gal back downstairs. She brings me back upstairs, and that lawyer chews me out. "You yelled at her. And he's chewing me out, and he goes, "And my name's on this sheet to fire me." I go, "I didn't write that thing. I'm sorry, And so then they bring me into these two people that are paid just to listen. I tell them everything for an hour. They go, okay, we'll get back to you in a couple of days. I go, a couple of days? We'll lose our country in 5 days. I mean, it was like, I'm going, this is crazy. So I'm going, you know what, so I'll get back to you. Well, I'll tell the president what's with these people. I said, yeah, okay, you get back to me, all right. So I head back downstairs, and the lady follows me again down there, the one I yelled at earlier. And she goes, you need to go now. I said, what part of don't you understand? I said, I'm not leaving till that guy in that other room tells me I have to go. So she trucks into the Oval Office, but there's a room between the Oval Office and where I'm at, the West Wing. She comes back out after 2 or 3 minutes, and she knew my handler's name. And the speech is over, I'm sorry. Y'all want to know what happened next? No. So anyway, that they used to do if they pull me off the stage. For a guy that never used to talk right, if you're rejection, I got over it. Okay. So here I am in the White House, and she comes out. She knew my handler's name, and what she said. My buddy in the Secret Service, he goes, "They'll have you hauled away. You have to go." And he's 100% true. And I go, "Okay, I'll go." So I leave the White House, and I'm in. I can't tell you the feeling I had. It was like I held him in my hand, but no, they took the papers, so I don't have them since this day, right? They kept them. But I'm sitting here going, here, I felt like I let the whole world out. I had the key, and it was just devastating. I'm heading into Virginia, and Ben Carson called me up, and he knew all about Dennis, and we had vetted him, and he knew I had to have that sign, and we were going to save the country. And he goes, Mike, I said, did you get it signed? I said, no, Ben, and I'm not kidding, almost in tears, and I said, no. And he said, well, Mike, Ben talks slow. He goes, well, Mike, God doesn't go by dates, and he doesn't go by January 6th or December 14th or November 4th. He goes, maybe things have to happen, and on God's timing and God's will, that before the truth can ever be revealed. And it just gave me such a peace, and I go, you mean it could still happen after the inauguration? Like that? Okay. You mean like tomorrow? Because you look up patience, you don't see my picture, but I've had to learn patience, okay? So, but it gave me this peace of mind that it was on God's timing, but I couldn't imagine. I go, okay, yeah, maybe there's something coming up in a month, right? And here we are 5 years later, or 4 years, So anyway, I get over into Virginia, and we no more than sit down. I'm telling all the people with us and my wife. I said we failed. I said failed, but I said Ben gave me some encouraging words. And at that moment in time, my phone dinged, and it was my daughter. One of my daughters sends me a picture of me that went up against the White House with martial law. I haven't seen it yet. She goes, Dad, what are you doing? Get out of there! Well, I didn't know that, here I am, the #1 story in the world, and I had no idea, carrying martial law papers to the president 9 days after January 6th. And my phone starts ringing, and I stopped it, but my wife and I knew instantly that was a divine appointment. The odds against all of that, what I just told you happened, are 100% impossible. You don't get into the White House, you don't get to use your phone, you don't carry around martial law papers you don't even know you have in your hand. Okay, you see the odds of this? It's impossible. So we knew it was a divine thing from God. We knew it was something different. This was going to be the genesis of everything to take place. And I quick got on the phone and called one of the media outlets that I trusted and said, here's the real story. I said, and I told them real fast what I just told you about the papers from a lawyer, and that I have evidence brought. All I need to do is have this thing signed in our government protective order. I took not hundreds, I think I took probably 500 calls from every media outlet in the world, every media outlet in the world that day and the following days, calling me up going, you got martial law paper, blah, blah, blah. And then if you all know, it started where I was attacked every day, where my pillow was attacked. My pillow lost Costco, Kohl's, Bed Bath & Beyond. But at that time, I didn't care. I had to save the country. I spread them out every day. We lost 26 retailers in 2 days. You know what I did? I gave the media 2 a day so they would attack me. 2 a day. Mike, you lost 2 more today. How do you feel? Did you hear about the machines? Did you hear about it? We have this evidence. You know what I mean? This is how I got the word. I didn't care. You know, I'm 100%, not 99%. If I didn't have the evidence, I couldn't. If any one of you has seen what I've seen back then, or know what I know, just like Tina Peters sitting there in prison, she looked the judge in the eye that day, and she can't say, "Oh, I'm gonna, Judge, I'm gonna quit talking about this." No, it's over if we don't change our secure elections. And by the way, the statement you seen she made out there, and the judge, or that governor of Colorado, that governor of Colorado is a very evil man, but you know what? He had a moment, a glimmer there. Our president put pressure on him. He's getting attacked now by, of course, the Democrats by releasing her. But he said one thing. He said, the one thing he said to get through this, he said, she was sentenced mostly because of free speech. He said, you can say anything you want about elections. It's free speech. This is what he was saying today. And you know what? This was as I'm watching it on the hallway before you all got here. I went on Bannon this morning. At the end of Bannon, we were running late for something, and I didn't know at the beginning of that. He played all this stuff. I guess it's been on CNN. They've been interviewing the governor on CNN, and Jenna Griswold, the most evil lady, Secretary of State this world has ever seen. You know whose name came up every other sentence was Mike Lindell. But wasn't Mike Lindell involved in it? Didn't Mike Lindell do this? Didn't Mike Lindell do this? Didn't Mike Lindell do this? And the governor said, no, Mike Lindell did not get the person. He didn't have anything to do with that, because I didn't know Tina at the time in that spring. But people that worked for me did. I didn't know anything about it. When they took my phone that time at Hardee's, that was great, actually. They take my phone. That was Operation Arctic Frost, and they couldn't find, because that was actually my proof that I wasn't, that I wasn't involved there. But I was involved when she came to the Cyber Symposium. And we sat there at that Cyber Symposium in the summer of 21 to save the country. And Tina kept brought in. I never met her in my life. And she starts telling me this, and all her lawyers go, you have to go hide. You have to go hide. Just let it go. Let it go. This is what they're telling her. And she looked at me and I said, no, you need to get on that stage. This is the one chance they will bury this. This is the last of our voice. This is our voice. That Cyber Symposium we put on. And I said, if you get up there, I promise I'll always have your back. And I said, and she got up there. And so I've had to live for the last year and a half thinking, boy, if she had never attended, but you know what she'd sit and tell you all when she gets out, she would do it again, knowing that we had to save our country. And that's that. But as we rolled into 21, you all know the rest. I want to tell you one more significant thing. In February 4th of 2021, Fox News got sued by Smartmatic, which hadn't been done with lawfare since 1700s. And when they did that, it silenced all of our media, Newsmax, Salem Media. They attacked OAN, so OAN was done about a month later, and they attacked Salem Media. So once you never got to hear about our elections again after that, period, ever. So then all you had left was the attack media. So what I did then, I spent millions of dollars making Lindell TV. You all need to go there too, by the way, lindelltv.com. But now, so I'm going to fast forward. This is the last segment I'll tell you that gets to what I'm going to do to win governor, and why I'm the only one that can win governor, and why we have to win governor. We have to save our state. So in the summer of 24, the president and I were sitting at his desk, and he said to me, he goes, we were looking at all the devastation. Every time he got indicted, we talk about it. I go, sir, you keep getting indicted. People see through that. I said, you're going to end up with more votes than voters like Pennsylvania, because people have seen through it. Now, what happened over the 4 years, as things, God uses all things for good. Well, here's what I told him. He goes, they're just destroying the country. He goes, sir, these are good things. He looks at me and he goes, no, he looked at me. He goes, okay, where are you going with this, right? And I said, no, God uses all things for good. I said, all these bad things happen. He's heard my story of My Pillow in 2012, where I first went on TV. I took in $100 million, and 6 months later, I was $6 million in debt, and I didn't have a bank or nothing. I had never started with anything. But all the things that happened in 2012, I pulled everything in-house. Everything in-house and learned. Almost done, Rick. Yeah. So anyway, so in 2012, my pillow took in $100 million, and I think we were $6 million in debt, and I was devastated. And there was handshake deals that were bad. There was corruption. There was mistakes made. I trusted people on the outside, but what I did is I pulled everything back, and with power of praying to God. I met Kendra and pulled everything back in-house. To this day, My Pillow does everything. We do our own manufacturing, our own call center, our own marketing, our own digital marketing, everything. Making our own pillowcases, I mean everything. Because I didn't trust it. No. I'm going to solve each one of them individually. But if 2012 had not happened, instead when I woke up that day, $6 million in debt, devastated, going, God, where did I go wrong? And I'm adding in my head, let's see if I go back to work in that grocery store, I'll be paid up by the time I'm 180 years old. That was $6 million, right? So, but I learned and I pulled it all back in. And I even used to say these speeches at the president's rally, which I went to over 100, I spoke at over 150 rallies for him. And what I said was, if 2012 had not happened to My Pillow, I wouldn't be here. We wouldn't be here. 85 million My Pillows sold, tens of thousands of employees over the years. And I said, if 2020 election hadn't happened, we would not be here, this great place we're in, and the great opportunity we have. We have an opportunity that's a miracle that we're even here. When I spoke at the Rose Garden back before the China virus, that was a divine appointment even getting up there. And the one thing I said, you can look it up, I said, we had taken God out, a nation had turned its back on God. We had taken God out of our schools. I said, we need to get back in the Word, spend time with our families, and pray for God's grace. Do you know how many people came up to me over these last 4 or 5 years and said, Mike, this doesn't feel like grace? I said, oh, but it is. And this is when I'm talking to the president. And you realize God gave us grace the night of the 2020 election when they didn't steal it. That was the grace. This is the chance to finally beat evil and break through. We have broke through the biggest cover-up of the biggest potential crime the world has ever seen, taken the United States without firing a shot. Period. But we broke through the big cover-up. People now get all their information from podcasts and 14 different social media platforms and all these things. But here we are, me and the president. I go, sir, all these things God uses all things for good for those who believe it. We've got this bucket. This bucket is your bucket of common sense. The more they attack you, the more they do things to the country, men and women's sports and tampons and men's bathroom and crazy stuff. People are pouring into this bucket of common sense, this new party. Called mega, but this guy just said, your party. The party of common sense. I said, then there's another bucket going on. I said, and that's the bucket of Jesus Christ. I said, that's God. I said, sir, people don't look to God when things are going good, like December of 2019, when Donald Trump had brought us the highest consumer confidence in the history of the United States. Did you know that? It was at that time, no matter where you started from, if you were in the streets or you were a millionaire, everybody had went up economically. Do you follow me? Wherever you're starting point, you improve. It's the only time it's ever happened in history. But it was amazing. But nobody gave God the glory. Nobody reached out to God. You're going, oh, this is great, but you didn't give God the glory. I said, sir, now people are praying. I said, it's the biggest revival because it looks hopeless. That's when people are praying. It looks hopeless. And then he looks at me and he goes, Mike, hey, they're destroying the country. He said, I don't know if we can get it fixed, 4 years. And I looked at him and I said, sir, with God, all things are possible. And him working through you, you'll get it done faster and better than anyone in history. And he looked at me and he said, yeah, that's right. It's so awesome. But anyway, so now I'm going to tell you, I told him last summer in August, I said, sir, I'm thinking of running for Minnesota governor. I said, Kendra and I have to pray about it. But I said, I have to make sure my pillow is secure. If you all heard of Arctic Frost, this isn't just the machine company. My Pillow's been the most attacked company in history. And we've been debanked, deplatformed, demerchant server. American Express cut us out, never been late a payment in their life. They went to my overseas vendors and they told them, if you do business, this is the DOJ, Biden's DOJ. If you do business with my Pillow, we're cutting off your banks. This has all been uncovered now. We just turned it into the government under S95. But anyway, I still said it's all been for 2 years. And during this time, you guys, these last 5 years, while I had money, and even when I ended up borrowing money too, but I built the Cause of America, which is 300,000 strong in all 50 states, and I led them. I started a network, Lindell TV, so we would have a voice and spent millions. I said every day was it's like been just a blur of trying to just never giving up on our secure our elections. In fact, that'll be a good ad. Amy Klobuchar and Mike Lindell come to a historical agreement, and then we go, what? Well, in 2018 and 19, Amy and I agreed. We're in the biggest agreement ever because she was the loudest voice in the country that said machines got to go. She named the voting machines. ES&S, Hart, Dominion. They run our country. They have to go. So did all these other Democrats in the movie Kill Chain. So what did Mike and Amy do since then? Mike Lindell spent $80 million and borrowed another 10 to go after the fraud and never let up on it. And Amy over here, after the 2020 election, she turned her back on that fraud. But she did go to Washington and help bring $20-some billion here to get here temporary and ship it to Somalia with fraud. Now, that would be a good ad. Amy, come on, that's not a good steward of our money, right? It'll be fun doing those ads, trust me. And, but anyway, my Pillow was secure in December. And I'm going to tell you the first interview I did, and the only one so far, was Esme Murphy on CBS. She brings me down there, and she goes, first question, Mike, my Pillow's bankrupt. Are you sure you can do this? I go, who told you my Pillow was bankrupt? I said, Esme, I built a company, the American dream, from nothing as a former addict. Built this amazing company, the biggest company Minnesota ever had direct sales, probably the nation. Direct sales and what we did, and that kind of company. And I said, we're still standing in spite of the biggest attacks ever. I spent 2 years, because my teams were out there working so good, that they were already never stopped working, never stopped fighting for our elections that were built up. I didn't have to lead them anymore. I just one call a month where I could be over here and every day waking up trying to save my Pillow as my employee company kept getting attacked. Every day, you're going to make payroll, you're going to be open. What's going to happen tomorrow? These things were happening like daily. Then we find out this summer it was our own government that was doing this to us. So anyway, I told Esme, I said, we're still standing. I said, this Minnesota's a mess. I said, I got plugged in. I've been through it all. All I got to do is everything I did over here. I didn't fix just one department. We need to fix everything in this state. Right now, I've spent all this time looking at the 24 welfare programs. How am I going to make each one of them? What if you only had this one to work on? You got to look at each one like it's your only one. And anyway, then her next question, I said, you're a horrible journalist, Esme. You thought my Pillow was under. Then she goes, well, Mike, your evidence is no good. You lost the $5 million challenge. And I go, Esme, you're worse than the Star Tribune. I said, you're a horrible reporter. I said, right here in your backyard in Minneapolis, the 8th Circuit overturned that last summer and said Mike was right and his evidence was good. And she stood there, I don't believe that. And Rick, quit calling me. And so now, okay. This is going to be a short hour. Okay. So now I'm going to tell you, if we get into that, after that report, I'm going, okay, this will be pretty easy. I get Esme, enter her credit. She taped that live. I didn't think she was going to air it. She aired it in its entirety. So I do give her that credit. I don't, because I even said to her, I go, were we just live? And she goes, no, it was taped. I go, Esme, I said, you are going to play that? She said, I will. She knew she had screwed up, at least do me that courtesy, right? And so I figured, oh, this is going to be easy, right? I'll have the minute, even if they attack, I don't care. As long as, remember, Minnesota's media went dark on me for 3 years. Where all the other media in the country, they were a lot faster to learn here in Minnesota that if you attack Mike Lindell, he's using you. These journalists would call me, I would filibuster them for an hour. You know what? I'm telling them, they're going, I remember Jim Acosta goes, Mike, I know you're busy. I go, Jim, I got all the time in the world. If you hang up on me, you could lose my number. You'll be the only journalist not to call old Mike, right? And this is the way I played with these journalists. Then some of them, if it was a long form interview, I would give them my book to read, and they would read my book and they'd be torn. So now their articles that they were ordered, these attack articles on me, they would be so good their bosses would not put them out. They would not put them out. And I'm going, oh, this isn't working. So I would have to tell them. They would send me there. You need to bash me more here. You need to call me a Trump lover, conspiracy theorist. Or their bosses when I go, flip this down here, flip this up here. You follow me? Or I was losing them. I had to tell them how to write their articles. They were torn with, like, this is going to be bad. I don't care. I don't care, And attack, that's fine. It was the only way to get the word out. Well, anyway, the news media here in Minneapolis, they're silent. Then I find out after doing 2 or 3 of the debates and stuff, I'm going, okay, I'm listening, get 3 minutes to talk, and I'm watching Lisa Damath go, a year and a half ago, I did this for fraud or something, but the Democrats blocked it, and I'm going, well, good for you, Special K. I said, I don't get it. You got an R before your name and it happened under your watch and you didn't sound the alarm? If I'm governor, I'm screaming from the top of the rooftops if we're blocked by anybody. I don't care what party they're in. They're supposed to be for the people. And then I got another guy coming up to me and going, Mike, now, we need to get some people on the left, some of their votes here to win. And he goes, when it comes to abortion in Minnesota, you're never going to be able to change anything. So just tell them you'll be okay down here, 3 months or whatever it is. I looked at him and I said, you think I'm going to tell people it's okay to half kill a baby so I can get somebody's vote? I said, I will never, ever go against my Christian values for God. It was disgusting. Then I'm going, okay, and I'm going to tell you why I'm the only one I feel can win this, for this election. And they said, well, Mike, are you going to honor this endorsement? I go, what is that? This is early on. I go, what do you mean? I said, honor the endorsement. No. I said, I'll go to the primary. And I said, if the people vote, I said, right now I'm number 1 in the polls. By the way, you guys, another poll came out. I'm number 1 with the Republicans. And I said, I did this when I ran for RNC chair. I doubled on the polls the night before Harmony Dillon and Rhonda McDaniel. I doubled them combined. And then the next day, the 168 gave me 4 votes. And and for me, they asked me, why are you running? And you all see the movie Armageddon. I like using that analogy. They go up to save the asteroid, and they ask Bruce Willis, her dad, why do you got to do this? Why are you doing this? It's the same thing. And he said, because I don't trust anybody else to do it right. We've been blue since 1972. The same input's going to give you the same output. They don't have the name to raise the money. God's given us all the tools. When I say us, my platform that I have. Right now, I'm the only one that can win. We raised more than all the money of the top 5 combined, and I haven't even started. I went down to Texas 2 weeks ago, did a fundraiser. I don't know how much we made. We made a lot because here's what I told them all. I said, you know what? In Minnesota, by the way, with the fraud, we're what? Because of me out there fighting for 4 years to be able to raise money saying, hey, help me, because my cause is still going on that affects the whole country. But anyway, with the fraud being, it's all in the news, right? It's another beautiful thing. And I told them, well, I'm going to tell you guys how I'm going to win. So I'm doing this at the fundraiser, and I ended with this. I said, and if you all don't donate a lot, I said, if I lose, I said, everyone's going to come down to Texas, and we're not going to send our best. They're pouring the money out right now. Is that right? Yes. So anyway, here's my plan. And then my plan to win is simple. we divided the state up into 67 Senate districts. And just like I did with the Cosmo America, where I built a team of 300,000 in all 50 states. And we have teams we're setting up teams. Some were not completed yet. But we started this 2 months into it. I told Rick, I told the team, and I said, hey, no, I'm getting longer to speak than 3 minutes with these things. They need to know solutions to these problems, and they need to know how you can win. It doesn't matter if some of them think they have better solutions if they don't win. We have to win. You have to beat Amy Klobuchar. And you guys, right now, one of the problems we have is in Minnesota, I found out, it's all new to me when I came into this too. I knew a lot about Secretary of States and crooked politicians, but I didn't know elections, right? So here you have August. If you went by their endorsement, once we get to the primary, so you got the primary, and by the time you win the primary, your elections in 2 weeks, because Minnesota in 2014 made it the most corrupt state by voting 45 days early. So you're already voting, and you just now got, I'm the candidate. I got to raise money. Amy's already got her money. Okay, you should have started campaigning against Amy months ago, like I am right now. Okay, they asked me the other day. They didn't attack me just 3 days ago. Mike, your campaign, you raised more money than all, but you've already spent it. I go, what am I saving it for? A rainy day is pouring outside. As it comes in, I'm going to keep campaigning. Oh yeah, you got this much money, so you're going in. I get all the money I want. I'm going to be campaigning, but you got to campaign the same time you're raising money to do the campaigning. It's 2 tracks. I do no marketing. So anyway, here's what we're going to do. We divide the 67 districts up. We're going to do rallies, big rallies, and big town halls all across the state, just like I sold pillows in every nook and cranny. And we're going to get the word out. We're going to get the churches in every single town involved in this state to get them engaged. A 250,000 people voted for Donald Trump in 2020 that didn't even bother to get out and vote in 2022. But you have to bring people hope. People here in our state, in our once great state, they sit out here in the rural areas, and you go out by Montevideo and when I go hunting out there and stuff, and they're like, and Minneapolis doesn't affect us. Well, now it does, so they know that right now. So at least you woke them up there. But they feel hopeless. Hopeless, like we're not going to win anyway because of the inner city vote. No, it ain't the inner city vote. I can flip them. I got no problem flipping them. I'll tell you how I'm going to do that. Those can be flipped. They can. Because the people downtown, you think they like Sharia law and all the Somalis, they don't. I hate to tell you, my first day I'm going to ban Sharia law, bring back the flag, and get rid of that eagle statue of Satan at the temple. It's crazy. That's the easy. But you guys, you go around the state, and we're going to do these to bring people hope. And you bring them hope 2 ways. One is we're going to get everybody engaged, and once people know, hey, everybody's going to get out and vote. You got to vote, because we have to, too big to rig, like the president said? Because they say, well, Mike, what about elections? And the media bashes me. Oh, you come with baggage. The baggage are the receipts. I talk to the president every week. We talk about the most important thing is our election platform. That Save America Act has to go through. It's got to go through, and everything we have right now, I will promise you that, by the way, if I win the primary, or when I win the primary, we have access to all the source code of all the voting machines, and we have all 3 brands in Minnesota. We are going to have the most secure elections based on the cards we're dealt ever in Minnesota this coming up election. Okay? And with that being said, let's say they steal it because they have to. You realize this is their last stand, evil's last stand. They're going to have to try and steal it. Now, it can be too big to rig, but then if we get everyone out to vote, which we're gonna, and then you have polls. I'm paying for polls as we speak, one being done right now. Polls are so important that the evil knew that a long time ago, giving us fake polls. Now you have to convince the public that it could happen in order to do the steal. Okay, so as we roll into the fall, the people in the state have to know, yes, we can win. And then when you get there, if they steal it, believe me, you think I'm giving up and getting those machines opened up? If my bank balance is at 0, I go to the bank and say, open them up. But we're going to catch them, okay? It's going to be a win-win. If they steal it, we're going to get rid of it. We're going to secure elections and I'll be put in anyway. But this is what I really believe is going to happen. Now, as we do that, I'm going to tell you, going around and getting people engaged. Here's another thing. I can raise the most money. We'll have all the money we need for your traditional TV ads. But that's not, now our voice is the biggest it's ever been in history. Remember I told you the little dot on the TV? We now have the biggest voice in the history of the world. There's 14 social media platforms, including mine called Vocal. You need to go there, vocl.com. It's on the App Store. This is my app. I'm going to communicate with everyone in the state. You're also going to have my direct number. All the people, I'm going to get my direct number. We have a campaign number. You call any questions, any emails. Just what I did with Cause of America. I don't care how many people call. I only have a team who take the calls and get them engaged. We all have to get engaged. Now, you have all those social media platforms. On my platforms alone, I have upwards of 9 million people. So every day when I push something out, when I push this out, boom, 9 million people. And guess what? Back in the day, remember the hair commercial they had, very famous, where it said, you tell 2 friends and they tell 2 friends and so on and so on. Well, now you tell 20 friends and they tell 2,000, they tell 10,000, they tell 1,000,000. Our voice expanded. I put out something on social media and then it goes out to the next layer. I got friends in high places in that layer. So we get this all out there, our voice, and then I have over 20 million people on my email list. So we're going to get these people and market them and market them and market them. Every single person in Minnesota, and we'll be touching, to give them hope. And then I'll tell you the last thing, because you say we have 2 minutes? What? 1 minute. Okay. All right. So what I'm going to do, then I'll finish with this. We can win this election. We will win this election. But you need to, it's the power of all of you to let the word out that I have a way to win. I can win with the marketing. But I also will tell you, I'm working every day on the solutions. As I walk into that Capitol in St. Paul, just like the president walked in, he was ready with his solutions to all the problems. That's what I'm working on now. I'm not going to wait till I get in there. And what are we going to do with the teachers? I already have the solution with their education. What do you do with the farmers? I already have the solution. What are we going to do with the inner city? I have the solution. What do you do with the homeless? Every single welfare product, all the NGOs, they're all going to be problem solution the day I walk into that office. So I guess my time is up, right, Rick? Thank you guys. And if you go on, really get on that. And you can reach me at mike@lindellgov.com. Or Mike, is that right, Rick? Mike@lindellgov.com. But then if you do that, if you need other questions, I'll give you my direct phone number we have for the campaign. I'll take any of your questions there. You'll all get answered. And we're going to post on that this week or early next week. By the way, I talked to the president this morning with texting. I'm going to probably meet him in a week or so. But any of you guys that have questions about the proper solutions we have, I can answer. And do I want the GOP endorsement? Of course I do. But I will tell you this, if I don't get it, I'm still going to win that primary because the people are polling the highest on all this stuff. And the last thing, if people ask me, well, Mike, are you going to go to November? Of course not. That would be, if somebody wins the primary, I'm going to give them every solution I have, and I would hope they would accept it because there's only one solution. There isn't any, well, we're going to do this 2 years from now. This is critical. We have to win now, and we have to have the solutions now, or I'm not kidding, people will be moving to Texas. So, thank you.
Thank you, everyone. And there are books out that you can pick up and outside, because we have to kind of be out by 9. Feel free to grab a big 4x8 sign.